So welcome to this tutorial, and as always I'll go through the materials I'm going to be using today. I've got a big sheet of Barkingford. It's half imperial sheet, and I'll be hoping to use most of that sheet. I've got a big jug of clean water. I have got the Sodalite Genuine. We're going to be painting monochromatically. You can choose whichever dark colour you prefer. I'm going for that because it's a lovely dark colour, that one. I've got my flat brush and I've got a size 8 brush. And have you noticed we haven't got a drawing today? We're going to be drawing with our brush. And let's make a start with that. Okay, so let's just take a nice lovely puddle of whatever colour you're choosing. And we're going to be painting this lovely riverbank, so I want to kind of suggest a pathway and some bushes and trees that take us back into the distance. So I'm kind of thinking about a shape like that goes back. So we're going to sit some little bush shapes, swirly marks, just to suggest some nice shapes going on here. We'll see a little hint of a pathway, I think. So let's just put a nice little line that kind of goes back into the distance like that. And I'm going to break that line now just to suggest that that's where the path is. Another little line here now, following that. And then we're going to put more bushes. So just these lovely swirly marks. You can see I'm not being too careful at all here. Let's let the washes do the work. Kind of come down something like that, look. And here I want us to kind of put a nice kind of tree shape that's kind of overhanging in this direction. So just using my brush just to put in a shape like that that's going to suggest that. How about do with some nice reflections? I'm going to reflect these here. So we're going to reflect, this will be a reflection, those little reflections into the water. How about we add a tree up here perhaps? But before I do that, excuse me, what I'm going to do is I'm going to flood the paper with washes in this top half and let it dry. So let's do that. So let's take our brush, nice big flat brush for this. And oh, we'll have the light kind of coming from this side. So I'm going to just put a nice simple wash, sky, lots of water now, just running that through. A little bit more sky colour going on here, look. And it doesn't matter if I go over those lines at all. Just, you know, want to put a bit of colour into that, that's all. And I'm going to do the same here in the water. I'm going to just take that wash, and as I come down, I'm just going to add more water. So it's a very light wash. You can see now, can't you? I've absolutely flooded this paper. And I've lost some of my lines as well, haven't I? But that's okay, don't worry about that. Now, should we let this dry? I think we need to let it dry, don't we? Let's do that and come back when it's nice and dry and start to add some details. So the washes are nice and dry now. Let's start to add some details. So let's start at the top half here, which is always a good place to start, from top to bottom. And I fancy a tree here. So let's just put in the shape of the bush now here. It's on the bank. There we go, a nice shape like that, look. And we'll have another one, look, something similar to that. And then they'll get smaller and smaller as they go back into the distance. But this is the bit I want us to concentrate on. So let's put in a nice tree shape. So let's just use the flat of our brush and push in a nice shape like that perhaps. Maybe it's got more branches. Maybe a little bit like that as well would be nice, wouldn't it? And now I know that's where I'm going to put my bushes. So I'm going to paint against that wiggly line that I've just put in and make sure I keep the lights of the bushes. So that's what we're hoping to capture here, the light of these shrubs. I can come in and add a few more darks. Maybe a bit of splatter would be nice as well. Just reinforce my tree trunks I've lost a little bit there, look. Let's put some nice shapes at the top here. And maybe some branches that are going to kind of come out a little bit like that as well, look, just a suggestion. Maybe a bit of tapping in there would be quite nice as well, wouldn't it? Just to give that impression that we've got nice trees growing in that area. A bit more dark. Maybe a bit more dark into that as well. All I'm doing is putting lovely swirly marks in there and then occasionally just adding some more branch shapes, like so. A bit more splatter. And hey ho, I think that area's done, isn't it? Okay. I would like to show these shapes off as well. So there we go, a little circle, they get smaller as they go back. And all I'm going to do here is just paint against those little shapes. Maybe put some baby tree shapes here using the point of my brush and just popping in on the side there, just scraping my brush into that section. We've covered lots of trees. If you think this is tricky, go back and look at the simple techniques we've used previously to paint trees. But you can see what that's doing now, can't you? It's giving this a bit of purpose. I'm going to come in now and I'm going to make this section a bit darker. And what that's going to do is going to push that back. Again, just reinforcing some of those wet branch shapes I put in earlier. As long as you've got your darks here against this shape, that's what you're aiming to do, really. A bit more splatter would be nice. Maybe a few little dots and dashes like that would help as well, wouldn't it? Just to suggest lots and lots of little leaf shapes. And if, you know, I can always come back later on and tidy up if I feel like I need to tidy that area up. But for now, I'm going to stop because what we're going to do now is going to work our way down. So these shapes now become shrubs. We have to make a bit of sense out of them, don't we? Because there's the path and then here we have more shapes, more bushes. So let's imagine, here's the pathway. So let's put a nice dark against that, look. I'll find that pathway using the side of my brush just to block in that shape. I can then pull my brush up like so. Clean my brush and just add some water. And can you see what's happening now? I'm creating the light on these shrubs here. They become lighter. And I just add the dark to the bottom of that. Let's do one here. So we want the light to catch it here. Add another dark. Clean my brush. And you can see it's messy, it's splashy. But, you know, that's the charm, isn't it? Especially when you're painting with one colour like this. You know, it just gives that lovely atmospheric feel, doesn't it? And if it's a bit loose and splashy, all the better, I say. Okay, so I'm keeping this line here as a path. So let's do the same now with these bushes here. Now, these are the ones that are going to sit on the bank. So let's just, let's have them kind of coming around like that and maybe going into the water a little bit as well, look, will be nice. Use the flat of my brush, following that shape. Maybe breaking the lines a little bit here. Let's clean my brush and just soften and push, soften and push. So we lose some of that path shape as well. Shall we do another one? Let's put one round about here, look. And again, I don't mind if it breaks that shape a little bit. Lots of water. In fact, I'm really going to soften that down a little bit more, look. Nice dark values, and that helps to show off the light which is catching this side. So we'll do another one. Okay, there's one here, so if I put a little line like that against it and then make that the embankment, I can clean my brush, I can just tease and pull that line out. We've covered this before with shrubs and bushes. If you're finding it tricky, go back to those tutorials. They should be really helpful. We're getting further and further away now, so I'll just create another couple. So there's the dark line, which suggests that bush. There's the bottom. Clean my brush and just pull that up, let it melt away. If you lose those lights, you can always come in and just lift a bit of paint away. There we go. Can you see how effective that is? We've created an awful lot in one go, haven't we? Distant trees, middle distant trees, shrubs going back into the distance, shrubs on the embankment. I'm going to come in with a really dark colour now. We're working wet into wet. I'm really going to plunge some of those darker washes into that area here, which is going to be dipping into the water area. Maybe a bit more water would be nice. Just going to allow them to just run like that. There we go. Now, there comes a time when we have to let it dry, and I intend to do that, but, you know, you can still keep coming in some of the wet areas just to reinforce some of those lights that you may have missed. Maybe a bit more here. So we're just seeing a hint of that path as well, aren't we? I'm going to tap into mine as well. I'm going to break it up even more. Lots of splashy wetness going on there, look. And yes, it's time. Brush down, let's let this one dry. So nice and dry now, and of course you can keep going back into it, can't you, just to tidy up. If you were painting in colour, that's not as easy because the colour tends to get a little bit messy, but you know, you can go back in and reinforce some areas. So here, for instance, I'd like a little bit more dark on that one, and maybe a bit more dark at the bottom. But I'm not going to mess about with that too much because I can always come back and do that later. But I'm going back to my flat brush now. And I want us to think about some reflections. And we're going to keep it nice and simple. Let's take a wash of our Soda Night Genuine with our lovely flat brush. And let's start. We're going to put a tree here, or some kind of foliage that comes across that will just frame this picture. But let's just come in here now and put a little line under. As it comes down, it's going to become bigger. I'm going to use the side of my brush now and really create a bit of movement in that water, look, just by using the flat of my brush. I could come back in as well at this point and just allow some more kind of drippy bits. They're just going to dropping in some darks into those wet shapes. Kind of just helps to kind of just fuse the two together, really. Bit more dark here. Remembering I'm keeping those lights, aren't I, on that left-hand side. And again, I can come in later and tidy, but what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take another wash. And this is quite wet, so I do need to be careful. Obviously, I can hear you saying to me, Joanne, why don't you let it dry? I'm hoping to. Before I go into that, by the way, I've got a cluster of trees here that's coming up, so I'm just going to make some shapes like that, look. Maybe some nice shapes that suggest some trees. Again, just the side of my brush now, just popping in a little bit of reflective value there, look. It's so much easier with a flat brush as well, isn't it? Look what I've managed to do with just one brush. Right, okay, let's just put in some value here. Now I'm going to come in with details later, but I just want to block in with a nice bit of dark. I'm going to have my shrub coming right from the top of my paper, and it's going to come round something like that. And then we're going to see it. I just kind of come in front of this shape, really. Just using my nice flat brush just to break up those shapes, look. So I can use the belly or the side of the brush to block in, and just using my brush here on its point on the side here, just to flick in some shapes that suggest a bit of foliage. We'll come in with details later. I'm just blocking that in. Let's have that kind of, or let's have it kind of coming down into the water's edge as well. That would be quite nice, wouldn't it? I think I'm just going to have a little bit of splatter into that as well. It's such a fun way to paint, especially if you're using a lovely big brush like this one and a large piece of paper. Right, now it is definitely a brush down. Again, you could spray into that if you want to. I'm going to leave that nice and wet at the moment and let it dry naturally. And then we're going to pull it together with just a few details that's going to bring this scene to life. So once it's nice and dry, we can continue. And I'd like to make a bit more of this now. We've blocked it in and we've splattered into it. We've got this shape here, but it's a rather rigid shape. So let's break it up a little bit. Let's take that lovely Sodernite Genuine and let's bring some shapes out. So for instance here, look, let's have maybe a couple of branches that are coming out and breaking that shape a little bit, and then I can just add some little dots and dashes just to suggest more leaves and shapes. And we can do that, well, you can do it wherever you like really. Let's have a little bit that kind of overhangs here. Again, just blocking in some nice smaller shapes. I can tap into that as well. That's rather nice, isn't it? And of course, if you're painting along with me, or even if you're just watching, that's fine. You learn a lot by watching. You know, we're all going to have a different picture, aren't we? Because we're all going to put these shapes in different areas. But I want mine to kind of break that shape. Go. And let's think now about here. So this tree then becomes, this side here becomes the bank, doesn't it? On this side. So let's just take our Sodernite Genuine and let's attach this to the water. So for instance, look, if I come in with a nice dark value, maybe like that, look, just to suggest these lovely kind of grass shapes. Oh, and I think I'd like some more little leaf shapes there, just breaking that shape a bit more. Maybe a bit more splatter as well, would be nice. And let's pull this down now, pulling it down. Again, I could go with my flat brush, couldn't I? Should we do that? Let's just take our flat brush again. As it's just so much easier just to use that flat brush just to create these lovely little shapes. And I'd like a bit more dark, I think. Just into that area. I can use my thumbnail as well, you know, or my fingernail, and just scratch into that as well. That's rather nice. That gives us a lovely shape, doesn't it? And of course we can do that on the other side. But you can see it's all coming together now, isn't it? And, you know, I used to do an awful lot of this when I was running my painting holidays. Or even when I was just, you know, painting outside, I would just spend time creating a monochromatic and then take a photograph, because I know that if I do a monochromatic, it's going to create all the values that I need for a finished painting. And that's exactly what this is doing, isn't it? We think about colour separately. Let's think about value. Again, let's just do a bit of tidying up. So I could do with just a bit more tidying up on this embankment here, where these shrubs meet the water. I'm going to come in, put a little bit more dark. Just putting a line and then just dropping the water underneath it, connecting that shape. I think we could definitely do with more down this end as well. So I can put a line, I can scrape my nail into that as well, like I did over here. I can just pull underneath these shapes, underneath them. Just let that run down into that area. And you know what? I think if I was to paint a full colour version of this, I would have enough information to be able to do that. So, as always, I'm going to say it's hard to know when to stop, isn't it? And of course, you know, you're allowed to put as many details in as you want, really. But I think that is just fine. Let's just add one little touch here. We always need just a couple of little birds. We'll have 3. There we go. I'll brush down. I hope you enjoyed that. It's a nice one to watch. I'm not saying it's an easy tutorial. It isn't. It does take a lot of practice to paint monochromatically, and especially a subject like this, which is kind of tricky, isn't it? I'm scratching with my nails as I chat to you, because there's a lot going on, isn't there? There's an awful lot going on. Practice those areas. We've covered these areas before, these lovely, lovely shrubs, and how we can create, you know, the light and darks of shrubs. We've covered trees before as well. We've covered reflections as well. So there's lots to go back on the previous tutorials and have a look how we approach that. Don't try and take on the whole thing if you're not confident. But I hope you've enjoyed watching that, and I hope you enjoy having a go as well. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Take care.